So I read 14 books in 23 minutes. And let me tell you how I did it so that I can introduce you to this book right here. Woo. Indian Classical Dance Traditions and Transformation. Welcome back to 23-Minute Reads with me, Maya D. This is kind of like my virtual book club, my accountability vlog, because in these short videos, I share with you my takeaways from my current reading, which right now is book 14 of my 23 to 23 challenge, where I'm reading 23 minutes per day, every day, as an action of self-love, as an investment into myself, and as a way of providing myself with some consistency in an ever-changing world. Hoping that you will join me along in this journey by simply dropping some comments down there in that comment section, reading along with me, so that there's an actual dialogue going on. Having in mind that while I have several decades of experience as a dancer, an educator, and a curriculum writer, I am not the know-all be-all for this book. I'm simply providing a space for dialogue, as I just want us to be better at the thing. This week, I want to share my takeaways from pages, let me look at my notes, pages 69 through 94. Join me as we discuss guardians, discipline, and the connoisseur. Once again, having in mind that I just want us to be better. So let's start this dialogue. Well, this week, as mentioned, I read pages 69 through 94. And my first takeaway number one, is guardians. So in Odyssey, and I'm still learning to pronounce these words, so feel free to help me with the pronunciation down there in those comments. In the Odyssey section of the book, we find these words, and I quote, "Do-gooders, earnestly guarding tradition, which in present form is not more than half a century old, have repudiated all new work as being disloyal to the gurus in that it goes beyond the prescribed boundaries they set." End quote. So this quote reminded me of a theme, a concept that has been discussed in several of these videos along the 23-minute reads and the 21-minute reads, which is this idea of preservation versus conservation. Preservation versus conservation. In this section of the book, I felt there was this struggle to acknowledge that there has been work done to preserve the tradition and how it interfaces with innovation, right? So how do we acknowledge that a lot of work was done to preserve the tradition that we have, but still acknowledging that there is a level of innovation that can happen, or even opening up to discussion of whether innovation is acceptable within this tradition, why or why not. As this innovation is sometimes seen as a distortion by some of the, and this is another quote, Orissa dance establishment and other guardians of the tradition. So there is a collective of people who are the establishment, right? And they are not leaning into this idea of innovation. And this is something that we also saw in one of our previous books, Hot Feet and Social Change. How do you navigate that space of preserving the ideas, preserving the tradition, preserving the technique, the traditions, everything that's embedded in that dance, and allow for it to still be relative in the present? I'm acknowledging the present space, especially when you have that conversation being between the contemporary practitioner and some of the more seasoned, the gurus, the elders of those traditions. How do those generations have conversation that allows for the protection and the growth of that form? As an outsider of this dance community, I find myself wondering, what is the healthiest way to support this dance tradition so that it continues into the future? You can always drop your ideas in the comments below. Takeaway number two is discipline. Growing up studying West African dance forms, I was told that the djembe, one of the drums that we danced to, was not appropriate for women to do. So one of the stories that I was told was that women should not play the djembe drum because of the heat that the drum created, and that it could possibly have a negative effect on the woman's body, and more specifically, a negative effect on her reproductive system. So things like, I remember being told at one point that it would fry my eggs so that I would not be able to have children. So it was a taboo. You shouldn't do this thing, which is not current practice, right? There are women who play the djembe drum now. And I bring that up because in the book, as they are speaked about Kathakali, it is described as having a high degree of physical discipline. Training begins at around 2:30 in the morning. It lasts 8 to 10 hours, includes splits and high jumps and needle sits and footwork, and this very rigorous oil massage to make the body supple. So a intense physical discipline is required in order to become a successful practitioner of this art form. Here's a quote from the book. The argument that the massage was gynecologically harmful to women, and also that the natural supple woman's body does not need the usachili, and may well be convenient explanation built around the all-male approach. So in this quote, end quote, in this quote, the given reason why the form is still a heavily male-dominated art form is that the physical discipline that is required in combination with the massage. So once again, looking at that, using the woman's reproductive system as a base for why this thing might not be appropriate for women. That previous quote is a statement from that social historical context, and it's still in play to a degree. And that while foreign women are now allowed to study for periods of time at some schools like the Kalamandalam, they do not accept female students, women students, as for long durations of time. And while there are all female troops, right? Similar to, it makes me think of within the West African dance forms, companies like Giwe and Mata, who have women playing djembe. This being Kathakali, is still a male-dominated art form. But as the title says, these are traditions in transformation. So I wonder what will be said of the form 10, 15, 20 years from now. Takeaway number 3, this is our final one. Takeaway number 3 is Connoisseur. How does Kathakali grow and come into the future? I feel like that's the continuous theme of my takeaways from this week. How does Kathakali grow and come into the future? And of course, feel free to drop your comments, your ideas in that comment section below. As stated on page 94, this is an art form for the connoisseur, end quote. Changes in society have affected both the training, that intense physical discipline, and the audience that engage with Kathakali. A guru from the Center for Kathakali, Delhi, complained that, here's a quote, actors today have no inkling of this science, nor do they have the patience to understand it, end quote. So there's been a decrease in the size of the audience. And it was also mentioned that the lecture demonstration model offered more financial benefits than that of some of the performance style events. But I think to a degree we have to understand that a shift in environment and knowledge of the audience also impacts how a performance is presented, right? And this was discussed in a previous book, Joan Myers Brown and the Audacious Hope of the Black Ballerina, as they as she being JB described how presentations had to sometimes be reformatted to fit their international audiences, right? So that the movement was understood or received in the ideal way. So what does that mean in relation to Kathakali? So in Kathakali, one of the things that is mentioned is that these performances that would have been 4 hours long sometimes are condensed to less than 2 hours, right? And they are being received by an audience that is not knowledgeable of the discipline that it takes to be a Kathakali performer, artisan, nor of the art form in and of itself. So there is a lack of knowledge in the audience. And what does that mean in relation to reformatting the performance? Do they get it? And what types of pressure are then placed on the performance when you condense such a large thing down to a smaller size, right? This was also discussed in one of our books, another one of our West African books, in relation to what happens when some of the social commentary that's embedded into that form is now presented to an audience that is not knowledgeable of that social context, right? So how is it received? Does it carry the same value, and so forth? Does the audience who doesn't understand the art nor the intense discipline it took for the artist really get it? How does the art form grow, preserve, conserve, and innovate so that it can come into the future? I don't know. These are my takeaways. These are things that I'm still pondering, but let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You can also just drop a book emoji so that I know that you're here with me, or even better, you can drop the name of a book so that I have another option to read coming up. My name is Maya D. This has been 23-Minute Reads. Thank you for staying to the end. Please remember to like and subscribe if you like this video or found it interesting in any other way. Stay blessed, spread a good word, and I will see you again soon. Take care.